Welcome to Recruiter Startup School podcast. My name is Dulta Doherty, and in this podcast series, I will be interviewing investors, advisors, and experts from the agency recruitment world. This week, I'm speaking to Alex Moyle. He's the founder of Nurture IT and has been in the industry for over 20 years, 16 of those years with Robert Half, where he worked his way through the ranks until he ended up heading up their learning and development platform, and then went on to set up his own training and performance company within the agency recruitment world. He's well known in the UK, well respected, and if you've ever gone to any of the events, I'm sure you'll come across his work. He's got a lot to say. He knows a lot about our industry. I've picked his brain on everything I could think of. So it went for about 40 minutes, which is quite long for one of our chats. I went through a lot of his stuff like Boringly Brilliant, and how he convinces recruiters that sales and marketing are the one and not something that we should be afraid of. How KPIs don't kill us, bad managers do. And how the best companies out there are focused on a niche, and whether that's a geographical or a technical one. And he goes through all of it. And look, if you're scaling a recruitment company, you're probably, and you're at that 8 to 10 mark, you've stolen a load of billers from somewhere else, and you know, they're hard enough to manage because they're quite independent. He's the guy you want to get in to set up everything for the next wave of people, so you can really create your culture and your performance culture. And he'll go through all of those details. And you know, I think anybody could learn from him. Anyway, let us know what you think. And look, this is just one of many episodes that I'm doing. Released a bonus episode earlier on in the week. Check that out with David Eyre on scaling recruitment businesses in Australia. And as ever, if you're enjoying the podcast, let me know on LinkedIn and send it to other people, please. All right. Have a great day, and hope you're all enjoying the World Cup. Hello, is that Alex?
Hey, Dalton, how you doing? It's Alex here. Nice to speak to you.
Great to have you here, Alex. Welcome to the Recruiter Startup School.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here.
I've given everybody, but could you go into detail on it? How you got into recruitment and how that has led you to the career that you've had, really?
Yeah, so I got into recruitment 20 years ago, and in that time I worked a temp desk for a company called Robert Half, and then moved into being a manager and director, and ultimately headed up learning and development and like an internal troubleshooting team. So I had a 16-year career there. And then in the last 4 years, I'm sort of run a recruitment training / performance management consultancy, helping sort of scale up recruitment businesses, go from 10 to sort of 50 people. So, and helping them do that through training and developing their people, improving best practices and processes.
When you were at Robert Half, you worked your way up to director. That's a big sidestep to go into learning and development. Was that a big sacrifice financially that you had to do initially, or?
Well, I've sort of had a weird route to it, really. So I became a consultant, then a manager, then moved to the perm business, and then I moved into training, and then sort of in Robert Half, they work training as a sort of an internal troubleshooter. Okay. And so whilst I was doing that, I would take on secondments for different businesses. So like I ran the Bristol business for 6 months to cover a maternity leave. I ran a big team in London. So, and then I became director for the learning development sort of troubleshooting team. So it wasn't a traditional career path from recruiter to sort of sales leader, as it were, because I did it through from a learning and development and a training background.
Okay, so you were kind of like the fixer.
Yeah, that's right. So if teams are struggling, and especially through the recession when times were hard, I'd go in and I'd look at operational best practice and how people were doing things and what could they do better, and then help give them the confidence to change.
Well, this podcast is about how people can start up, scale, and potentially sell a recruitment business. And it sounds like a lot of your clients fit into that model of going from 10 to 50 to 100.
Yep, that's right.
When do they consider training? Is it something that they do when they get to 10, or is it something that you tend to find that maybe they haven't paid a lot of attention to that part of it?
Well, I think it depends. I mean, most of the clients I work with tend to be thinking about training once they get above 6 or 7. Because once you get above 6 or 7, you're probably starting to bring some people into the business which are less experienced. And training people on how to run a 360 recruitment desk, it takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of time and energy. And often when you're hiring those people, you compete with the bigger firms who sell training and career development as their big plus point. And so those are the things you've sort of got to show a pathway. When I work with individuals that are maybe sort of 10, 15, 20, they're looking at training across the board, because they know it's not about just hiring experienced billers and getting high levels of performance. It's about their ability to bring people in and get them successful. And so by about 20 or 30, a lot of people are starting to think about bringing in their own trainer, or at least make it part of someone's job. Because you've probably got 5 to 6 people that are under 12 months experience and need a lot more of that support and coaching.
I followed a lot of your stuff online, so you must be doing something right from a media perspective. I've come across you saying the statement "boringly brilliant" a few times. Can you elaborate on that for us?
Yeah, so boringly brilliant is sort of what I talk about when it's about how do you get a team to build consistently day in, day out. And the challenge that a lot of recruitment businesses have is that they think they're in the business of filling jobs, where really they're in the business of picking them up. And so what a lot of recruiters do is they think they get paid for sending CVs, they get paid for arranging interviews, but really you only get paid for making placements. And so boringly brilliant is about the business's ability to balance business development, going out, winning new business, chasing leads, converting leads, with delivering to those jobs that you do get. For a lot of businesses, they only see business development as the thing you do when you don't have any jobs, where actually you should be doing it all the time, because it then means you can be really selective on the jobs that you do work. And the most successful firms I work with spend the most time working on jobs they're going to fill. The ones that struggle are often the ones that are working jobs where actually it's not very good, but working a job that's with 5 agencies, working in Cork with 3 days a week in Truro, for a .NET developer that can also do PHP, that's preferable to picking up the phone and chasing some leads. And businesses that get caught in working bad jobs generally struggle to grow.
And what is that, when we break that down to the granular, what does boringly brilliant look like from, let's take it from a perm consultant and how they run their day. What would that look like in an ideal scenario?
Well, ideally, it's not just about what they do every day. It's about how do they organize their desk. So do they have a list of companies that they know are either recruiting today or going to be recruiting in the next 60 days? That's their lead list. And in that lead list, are they making sure they're doing everything they can to stay front of mind with a client? It's not about smashing the phone, going, give me the job. It's about showing value, being front of mind. So when the client does need to go outside their PSL, or they do need to go outside their internal recruitment team, they think of that recruiter first. So
but what type of stuff can they do to show value?
Well, sometimes it's just like I know a couple of recruiters at the moment. They're winning a lot of business off internal recruitment teams. So when they struggle, they have the choice as to who they go out to. So they have a fortnightly newsletter that they send out, which is basically all the latest Google plugins, the Chrome plugins that help with recruiting. So sort of counterintuitively, they're helping internal recruiters recruit better, but building trust and credibility so they get the call when they can't find someone. And these individuals aren't recruiting sort of like customer service staff. They're recruiting niche roles. So the likelihood of an internal recruiter finding someone is slim. But what they're doing is they're saying, look, I'm here to help. Okay. And I want to help you do well. And I only really want you to call me when what you're doing at the moment doesn't work. And that's what I'm here to try and do.
And what are the biggest training gaps that you see of your core clients when you go in and I take it is your first stage to do need analysis on what they're doing or an audit? Or?
Well, I approach sort of training in a different way. So I don't start with training needs. What I start with, how the business is performing. And so that's my sort of like internal troubleshooting consultant background. Training is the output, but really what you're looking for is, well, what behaviors do you seeing at desk? What's the business doing on a day-to-day basis that is or isn't resulting in their performance? So I start with just what are they doing to manage their own pipeline? I look at their process. I look at their controls, how they hold people accountable. And a lot of times I get brought in to say, my people need training. But actually, the reality is they don't need training. They just need to be made to do their jobs. And sometimes people use training to cover for the fact that managers aren't actually holding people accountable to do the things they need to do every day in order to be successful.
And those accountabilities, what do they look like from a good manager standpoint? What are they looking? How are they viewing the performance of the recruiter in order to get the most out of them?
Well, I mean, the number one thing is a phrase that Robert Half used to use a lot, which is close to the money. How close to the money are your team every single day? How much of what they're doing today is likely to convert into a fee? So primarily for a lot of managers, that will involve really thinking about carefully, like, are we working good jobs? How are we prioritizing the jobs that we're working? Are we pushing back on the client? Are we booking client meetings? Are we telling a client we can't help them? You know, and so it's just making sure they manage and prioritize that sourcing effort. And when you manage sourcing effort well, you then create a need to go and pick more better jobs. I'm reminded when I went to the Dublin office of Robert Half, and the guys there were cracking chaps, and they were, but they had this board full of jobs, and they said, "Oh, we just can't make any money, but look at all our jobs." But when you went through them, you know, multi-agency, client not returning the call, working in the middle of nowhere, like, and you actually rubbed it off. They had 3 jobs out of 40 that on their board that were actually fillable. You know, and immediately when you stop letting people work those jobs, everyone starts thinking, well, where am I going to get new jobs from? And that's the trigger to make sure that actually, well, now we need to chase some leads. Now we need to keep in touch with our existing clients. Maybe we even, revolutionary concept, keep in touch with some of our candidates.
Yeah. So it sounds like a lot of it's about qualification of businesses you want to be working with, qualification of the roles that they have within that, and then within that, then qualification of what's the quality of the candidate.
Yeah, the biggest thing that small recruitment companies can do is not feel like they've got to work with everybody. You know, most recruiters need 20 deals a year, and they've had a fantastic year per recruiter. So you think you work a market in London, like, you've got to find 20 people to give you a job in a year. Sorry, you've probably got to find 40, 50 people to give you a job, and you'll probably fill 20. So actually, when a client says, we're RPO'd up, jog on. You know, when you've got a client that gives you the jobs but never returns your feedback on CVs, you know, doesn't ever always seems to find the perfect candidate through the internal recruitment team, jog on. You know, work with people that want to work with you. In life, we wouldn't accept being in a relationship where the person we were with and loved cheated on us, forgot our birthdays, let us down, was emotionally abusive, and the sex was bad and infrequent. You know, we would never sign up for a relationship like that in real life, but yeah, that's the type of relationship we sign up with every day with a number of our clients. And the best recruiters I know that scale are the ones that just go, you know what, we're not interested. Or they treat the clients like they get treated. So they just send someone across and they don't put any effort in. If the client wants anything proactive, they're not going to get anything in return. They don't bother. They just tell the client they can't help. And it's having pride in your time, and the culture, embedding that in the business is one of the key traits to success that I see.
I've worked a lot with Robert Half people over the years, and one of the things they do well is they work backwards on how to achieve the results. Can you explain what that means?
Yeah, well, it's starting with the end in mind. So Robert Half loves a KPI or two, but what the best managers do, and KPIs in themselves, I'm a big believer in KPIs. But there's this band out of a place called Newport, which is a place in South Wales, and called Goldie Lookin' Chain, and they have this song which is guns don't kill people, rappers do. And I'm a believer that KPIs don't kill people, bad managers do. And so KPIs in themselves aren't bad. So what companies like Robert Half do and Michael Page will do is they work backwards. So if I need to bill 10 grand a month and my average fee is 5k, then I need to do 2 deals. If my fill rate's 25%, then I need to pick up 8 quality jobs. If only 10% of my leads convert, then I need 80 leads. But it might be I can get 20% of my leads convert, so I probably need 40 leads. And what percentage of the people that I speak to give me a lead? Well, I'll probably say 1 in 4. So if I need 40 leads, I probably, and I speak to 1 in 4, I've got to be in contact with 160 people in a month to get my 40 leads. And it's just understanding how what you put into the machine ultimately determines what comes out of the machine. And the industry is terrified of the word volume. It's terrified of the word activity. But if you don't, really simply put, is that I always ask, how many people do you know that will call you if they have a job? That's the question I ask. And that's really the measure of whether you're going to make it or not. How many people will call you if they get a job? And so a lot of the legwork in recruitment is not about selling, it's about marketing. Who will give you a call when you get a job? And what are you doing to position yourself to get that call?
Tell me, what are the firms that you're dealing with? What do they have in common, the ones that really impress you right now?
There's a few things that have. So firstly, that they are very focused on a niche and protect that niche. So, and what I mean by that is that if they work quite a general skill set, so like accounting, then they focus on a tight geographical area or an industry. If they work a very tight technical niche, like in a lot of IT, they will work a bigger geographical area, but they're very diligent in not stretching too far out of that. So that's the first thing that I see. The second thing that I see is that businesses are investing in building a relationship with the wider community that they serve. And what I mean by that is running events on a regular basis that gives back to that local community. It's something that Robert Half, Michael Page, Robert Walters, all the big firms do year in, year out. But I'm seeing more small firms do that. So they're running roundtable series, they're running local business events. And what they're basically saying is, look, we want to give you value. And when you give you value, like, you're going to get to hang out with us. And when you hang out with us, you might realize we're nice people. Because you think we're nice people, you're going to give us a chance. And at the end of the day, to get a job from a client, most of the time, they just got to think you're nice, and you're not just like you don't fulfill the stereotype of the recruiter that they work with. So those are probably the two things that I see. And it's not that you can't succeed doing other things, but those are the people I meet where they just look like they're enjoying it, and it's still hard, but they feel like they're part of something bigger.
You've just described all my best clients. So I can see all of that as well. But it's interesting that you categorize that into the accountancy and finance one, where they probably go out and meet their candidates and clients, and maybe some of the tech ones where a lot of it's a bit more about being niche and being delivery focused, from what I see anyway.
Yeah, you got to. I mean, the nature of your type of recruitment correlates between supply and demand. So if there's massive demand and low supply, you don't have to deliver as high a level of service as if there's more supply than demand. So something like finance and accounting, there's sort of an equilibrium between finance and sort of supply and demand. So you've got to add some more value. Part of that is meeting candidates. Part of that is running events. And so it's just, but if you know there's only 2 Purple Squirrel developers in the UK, you can be a bad person and they'll still use you. The problem is they won't choose to use you when other people have those candidates. And so it's if you want to expand out of that niche as a business, then you're going to need to probably work with areas where there's more supply, and therefore people are going to have more of a choice.
Should we be training our perm and contract recruiters in a different way? Should they be operating differently throughout the day? How does that look from a training standpoint?
I mean, I think that business development is always important. I think one of the missing links for business development is people missell it. So they call it sales. So if you think it was two, you've got sales and marketing in a recruiter's job. And the number of people say, I hate sales. And I go, really? And I go, actually, you do a lot of selling. I think there's 3 points where there's any sales call in a recruitment business. Okay. First one is, Mr. Client, will you give me a job? Second one is, will you meet the candidates I've sent across? Third one is, do you want to offer? And the candidate is, basically, there's three sales points for candidates. Do you want to go forward to the job? Will you go for interview? Do you want to take the job? Those are all sales conversations because they're looking for commitment. Everything else in recruitment is marketing, which is, hey, Dolta, look, You've got a watch. If that watch breaks, I have watches. That's all we're doing. We're just basically saying, look, you wear glasses. If those glasses ever break or you get a bit bored of them, look, I have watches. And we're showcasing product. We're marketing. It's about awareness. And so one of the biggest changes, not necessarily a training change, it's a mindset change, has got to be focused towards getting recruiters to think a bit more like marketeers. When people have a choice as to who they call, who do they call? Do they call you? And because most business owners make it sales, inverted commas, then everyone hates it. Actually, what you should say is, look, the difficult bit is finding people and getting them to go forward. The easy bit is just letting them know you're there. And it's when you can make that mindset shift. But because so many recruiters only do business development when they need jobs, it makes it a sales call, where the great recruiters do marketing, which is, hey, you have those people, I have those people. I know you're not recruiting now, but if you needed someone, I have someone. And when you do it all the time, you take the pressure off the business development calls.
Yeah, that all makes sense. Now, can we jump into marketing a little bit?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so I approached you to come on here because when I think of training, I think of you, and your media has hit me enough that you're in my mind as the UK recruitment training guy. So you've positioned yourself as a thought leader, and you've done that through sharing enough value throughout a day. Now, the market seems to be changing a little bit more, in my view anyway, to moving a little bit away from the phone, and recruiters incorporating a bit more digital marketing into their day. How do we keep them accountable, keep them on the phone, keep that energy going, but yet make sure that they're creating an inbound solution as well? Where do you see all that piece going?
So they're all tools, and each tool has a role to play. And so social media is very top of funnel. It's about awareness, and it's about adding value to your community. And that could be through commenting on posts in LinkedIn. It could be, but it's wherever your community lives. If you recruit developers, it might be Stack Overflow, GitHub. But it's just about being a good citizen and being there. And so whilst that's valuable, it's a medium term play. And so where I think there's more value to add is using some of the digital aspects. And a lot of what you post is about what people then see when you do connect with them. And bear in mind, a lot of recruiters connect. So when they try and connect with someone, they look on their profile and go, do I want to connect? And what they'll always see is, I'm recruiting for this, I'm recruiting for this, I'm recruiting for this. They're not inspired. If they think, oh, this is like how to find a perfect job, how to interview correctly, how to build your employer brand. They see things that think, actually, this is of interest to me. People are more likely to connect. So that's the first thing. It's just thinking about what is in your feed. The second thing is I think the biggest underutilized tool in recruitment is email. And an email, because what most recruiters do is they use email to sell. This is the job. Do you want to go forward? Where actually email has tremendous awareness building. And sometimes it's as simple as seeing an article and just sharing it and going, saw this, thought of you. And so a lot of the successful businesses I work with are starting to be much more proactive in using email to add value to consumers, whether it be through newsletters, thought leadership, but not talking about jobs, but talking about sort of just things that are of interest to that market, the .NET newsletter or leads times, just something that serves that community and shows that they actually have made an effort to give them something that's of interest.
So what would your message be to founders out there that are terrified that their room is too quiet, that recruitment wasn't like what it was when they were leaving S3 5 years ago, 10 years ago?
Well, so I'll leave S3 for a second. So firstly is that I think that they're right to be frustrated. People hide behind email, and I look at the number of conversations that are like, how many negotiations take place over email? So I get often, this candidate's not going for an interview. What should I write in the email? And I'm like, don't pick up the phone. Just talk to them, treat them like a human. Like, it's just, if you think in a phone conversation, you communicate 180 words a minute. When was the last time your candidate ever sent you an email over 180 words?
Yeah.
So even in a 5-minute conversation, you've got 900 words, 450 of those might be yours, 450 if you've got more from that. So firstly, they should be frustrated. The second one is that social media is fine, but just ask them for the output. What leads are they generating? And often recruitment business owners, especially those from sort of what I call recruitment farms, like the battery farms, like a Robert Half or an S3, where the phone is the tool. It's about what are you measuring the output. So I don't care whether you do email. I don't care whether you do LinkedIn. I don't care when you do that. What I'm wanting to see there is how many client meetings have you booked? How many leads have you generated? How many of your leads have you converted into vacancies? You know, pick meaningful metrics that allows people independence to choose how they want to do that. But at the end of the day, if they're not getting the output in terms of quality opportunities coming in the door, it could be that they're not doing any of it. It could be what they are doing isn't working. And the key, my message to all business owners is stop focusing on volume and try focusing on effectiveness. You know, that's what the best managers do, is that they can talk about volume because volume is important, but really it's about how well do you do what you do.
Yeah, it's really interesting. Like I remember being at one of the farms myself for a few years, and I've seen you describe billers as plough horses and show ponies or show horses.
Yeah.
And where could you? Well, I'll let you explain what that is first.
Yeah, so there's I see two types of it's similar to footballers and sports stars. So you see some individuals that are super talented and they're slick and sharp and fantastic with the words, but what they lack is grit and grind when the going gets tough. And then you've got another type of recruiter where they aren't particularly flashy. They probably aren't particularly. They can dig in and push hard. And so a phrase, I didn't create it, a friend of mine, Matt, did, and he talked about you've got show horses and plough horses. And the same goes in football. You know, you've got your footballers that are all show, but actually when the going gets tough, they sort of fade away. And then you've got those that are a bit more workman-like. So I've got a friend that's an Arsenal fan, so he always talks about Ray Parlour. You know, just grinds it out. Paul Scholes was a bit of a grinder, fantastically talented, but grit and grind. Does that make sense? Didn't have any of the show of David Beckham. Like it was just, I'm just here to work hard. The Neville brothers were very similar. You know, just it's not about being flash. Now, ideally, you want someone that's got all the talent and willing to work hard, and that's when you get world-class performance. But it's about what do you do when the going gets tough, and how do you grind out performance. And it's what you do when the going gets tough is really what separates the wheat from the chaff.
And so it leads me on to my next question. When I was at one of those, I was at Robert Walters for a few years, and I did quite well, but I didn't really like to follow their system as much. I like to spend more time at my desk than be out probably meeting people than they would like, and I outperformed a lot of people in the room at the time. But they didn't like it because my system didn't fit in with the system that was uniform to how they operated. So from a training standpoint, I can see that now that's very difficult for them, because maybe I was showing behaviors that weren't as team orientated, as if I was doing the same thing as everybody else. How do people deal with people who kind of want to do their own thing within a team dynamic from a training and development standpoint?
Well, it's interesting you say that. I mean, I think Robert Walters is one of the firms that probably does allow you a little more scope.
And they did, in fairness. But
than say, for example, a Robert Half, but they still will have a way. I think the key is you've got to separate out the financial performance and the behaviours. So, for instance, if you were in my team and you weren't going on client meetings and you were still billing, I'd sort of be okay with it, but I'd sort of feel like dimensional, and actually it's not about the billings, it's about what longevity are you building in your desk, you know, and people buy people. And so the more they know you and the better they know you, the more likely they'll do it. But if, say, for example, you're collaborating, you're flipping opportunities between individuals, you shout candidates, and you're a constructive, helpful member of the team, then that's fine. It's when you take the fact that you don't want to work their way with the fact that you don't share, with the fact that you come in when you want. And it's when, irrespective of your billings, the behaviors become disruptive that something has to happen. But someone's billing and they're doing things differently, you say, well, when your business gets to that stage, you can do that. But if you're not sharing, you're aggressive, you're uncollaborative, then that individual shouldn't be in that team, and behavior needs to change, because it becomes a bit like a cancer, and it sort of just rots the whole team from the inside. So I don't know enough about how you behaved in Robert Wolf's.
No, I was grand, but I was just trying to figure out like what you would do in that circumstance. So it's kind of like the Eric Cantona thing, where you give him a little bit of leeway as long as he's performing, and eventually he might just burn himself out and go off.
Yeah,
go off.
That's a good analogy. But Eric Cantona did toe the line. Like, he wouldn't have existed with Ferguson if he didn't toe the line. And once he stopped towing the line, irrespective of how well he played, then it didn't work out. And the same is with David Beckham. The same is with Roy Keane. You're allowed that individuality, you're allowed your character, but if what you do is impacting the overall behaviour of the team and the success of the team, then Ferguson was fantastic at going, you know what, no one's bigger than the team, get lost.
Yeah.
And so it's as much about the behaviours and the input to the team, because I've got friends that have done it very differently and existed in places like Robert Half, but they are collaborative, they do share. I'm a big for me, the transactional aspect of recruitment is extremely boring. For me, the bit that makes recruitment really interesting is people. And so I'm a massive believer in like speaking to people, meeting people, going to physical events, because it just makes it interesting. It makes me feel part of a community. But for some people, they're not motivated by that. They just want to find some candidates, send them across, make some fees, and life is good. So everyone's got to find the home that works for them, really.
Yeah, no, it's an interesting one. And just for the record, I wasn't comparing myself to Eric Cantona.
You're better, right?
Yeah, right.
Are the seagulls following this podcast?
Yeah, they might be. So look, that just leads me on to my last question, Alex. What are you up to these days? I believe you're a tech startup entrepreneur as well as a trainer. And how can people reach out to you if they want some help with their training and development?
Well, they can find me alexmoyle.co.uk. They can find me on LinkedIn. Line, so it sort of replaces that lead spreadsheet. It's not a CRM. It's not a plug into a CRM. It's just a way to manage that sort of sales pipeline. So you can find me about. I also, part of the Recruiter Zone, I host the Recruiter Gym, which is a live TV show, which happens every couple of weeks. So you can find me on there too. And but yeah, I'm around and about in the recruitment world. So it's great to be part of that with you and here and your podcast, and hopefully people will join us on the show too.
Yeah, that's great. Could you just say the name of your startup again there, because the line cut out?
Okay, it's nurtureit.io. Nurtureit.io. It's a sales pipeline tool.
Yeah, could you explain that a little bit? You just popped out of the line there.
So it's a sales pipeline tool which effectively replaces the lead spreadsheet. So for anyone that's familiar with Trello, it's a bit like a click and drag columns. So the idea being is every stage of your sales pipeline is a stage. So hot lead, warm lead, cool lead, new job, CV sent, and every opportunity you're chasing is a card. And you can drag it from one side to the other, and it adds up the totals of what you've got at each stage of the process. And what it does, it gives high levels of visibility on what's the value of their pipeline and manages visibility on what's the value of the pipeline within their whole team.
Oh, that sounds great.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks so much for coming on. I'm sure lots of people got lots of value, and if they need more detail, they know where to find you now.
Yeah, they can find me at alexmoyle.co.uk. But thanks, Walter. I really appreciate you having me. Very kind of you.
I'll let you get back to your training seminar.
No worries. Take care now. See you soon.
Bye.
Cheers. Bye.
Well, massive thank you to Alex for coming on the podcast and sharing some of his knowledge with us. You know, I place a lot of recruiters as a rec to rec who are probably about a year and a half into their career. One of their main complaints is that they are not getting the right training and development. And another is that they feel that the business that they're in isn't structured in a way to bring the best out of them. And I think somebody like Alex coming in and setting everything up in the right way for you is absolutely necessary to having a world-class recruitment business. And maybe you know it all and you don't need that, but in my experience, most of us can use a helping hand, especially with training and development and performance management. So look, great episode, great guest, and hope you all enjoyed it. And we'll be back next week with another episode. Till then.
The podcast you just heard was made using Anchor. Ever thought about making your own podcast? Anchor makes it really easy for anyone to get started. It's a one-stop shop for recording, hosting, and distributing podcasts. Best of all, it's 100% free. Sign up now at anchor.fm/new. That's anchor.fm/new to get started.